So once again, good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for being here. Sorry about the break, but we're glad to be here. Hope you're having a wonderful day. All right. All right. I just want to be sure we're good on all the platforms. Facebook, YouTube. Thank you very much for being here. Please like and share the live. If you're on YouTube, if you're on Facebook, kindly like and share. If you're on Twitter, please like and repost. For those of us on TikTok, please don't stop power tapping. Thank you very much for 4.6k likes right here on TikTok. I really do appreciate it. Let's keep the numbers going. All right. So I was saying something earlier before the break that the videos we're making, right, or that we're going to be listening to, the particular one we're listening to, just like the one we listened to the last time, it is a reaction video. And what that is basically is that, so someone says something or makes a video or writes a script or whatever it is, makes a post, and then we react to it. And like I said, clearly a lot of people are happy with it. Like, folks are learning, which is quite nice. It's just that apparently it looks like those who learn happen to be people from our part of the country, Yoruba, and also Northerners. Interestingly, for some reason, I think certain people from certain parts of Nigeria feel that they can make statements and say whatever they want to say, but you don't have any rights to question whatever it is they're saying or to set the record straight. And whereas they would, go out of their way to create propaganda and just spread falsehood, you don't have any right to even set the record straight and say, this is what happened, this is the truth. And I say that to say that there'll be a lot of reaction videos. And to have so, I mean, whoever wants to hug a transformer can go ahead and do so. But we're going to set the record straight respectfully. But I think it's important that we don't allow false narratives to fly. And it's a mistake that some of our people have made in the last 50 some years. But we have to make sure that we set the record straight, again, respectfully. But those who are against it are not against what we're doing because it's not respectful. They're against it because they prefer silence from our side. Meanwhile, they can keep, publishing lies, but that's not going to happen. Having said that, this particular video is about abandoned property. All right. So we titled it "The Abandoned Property Lie: How the West and North Saved Igbo Houses." Now, for some of you, you probably think, what does that matter? The truth is, if people tell you that your father stole what belonged to them, it's a way to get you to give them what belongs to you. And if you don't know the facts of history, you become susceptible to being blackmailed by anyone, particularly folks from the South, is because it's a MO, it's a modus operandi. So the conversation today is about a claim that somebody made saying that Yoruba people cornered properties belonging to Igbos, and somehow we've never really talked about it in Nigeria as though it was one big secret. But today we're going to be talking about what really happened, how things went down in different parts of Nigeria. So it's going to take us a while, but I'm sure we're going to have a great time together. Having said that, before we get into it, please let's like the live. If you're on TikTok, thank you for the 4.7k likes on TikTok, but please don't stop. Let's like, let's share. And if you're on YouTube, please like as well. Just double tap on your screen. That way you've liked the live, and share on Facebook as well. These things help to get others to see what we're doing. If you're on Twitter, please like and repost. Thank you very, very much. Now let's get into it. So I'm going to read the description of this video and then we will listen to it. This is from one of the videos on our YouTube channel, Busui Oris. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. You're gonna love the many things that we have there. Really fantastic content, for me say so myself, and I'm glad I'm not the only one saying so. A lot of people have said the same, but please take advantage of the materials we have there. Okay, let's get into this. The history of Lagos real estate and the post-war era is being intentionally distorted by voices seeking to fuel ethnic division. A recent accusation suggests that an abandoned properties committee in Lagos functioned like the one in Port Harcourt to seize Igbo assets. This narrative completely ignores the historical reality that Lagos was under a military regime in 1968, meaning no House of Assembly even existed to form such a committee. The truth is that the framework established in Lagos was a deliberate effort to protect the wealth of those who fled during the unrest. The government took over these properties specifically to prevent them from falling into the hands of illegal squatters or being vandalized. By managing these buildings, finding legitimate tenants, and collecting rent, the administration of Governor Mobolaji Johnson ensured that the owners had a financial foundation to return to. In 1970, the Lagos State government successfully returned thousands of properties to their rightful Igbo owners, along with over £250,000 in accumulated rent. This was an act of administrative integrity that allowed many families to rebuild their lives in the city. One of the most profound examples of this Yoruba spirit of excellence and fairness is the story of Shubobin Balogun of FCMB. He personally ensured the maintenance of Alex Ekweme's property and returned both the house and the collected rent to him after the war. This level of honesty is a hallmark of how Lagos handled the situation. It stands as a firm rebuttal to those who prefer a narrative of perpetual victimhood over the documented facts of Yoruba hospitality and legal protection. Gratitude is the only logical response to a system that safeguarded private property during the national crisis. While leaders like Ojukwu led their people into a conflict they were unprepared for and still managed to reclaim their own father's estates, the Yoruba people were busy preserving the assets of their neighbors. It is time to hold the actual Igbo leaders of that era responsible for their decisions instead of blaming the very people who provided a safety net for Igbo property owners in Lagos. Here's a video, The Abandoned Property Lie, How the West, North and Midwest Saved Igbo Houses. Enjoy. This return, we should know. Not that it becomes our main focus in life, but we should know what has happened so that it's not easy for people to blackmail us with lies. I'm going to read to you what started the whole thing, and then we'll see how much we can read together today. So let's start with what the person talked about. He said that the Lagos Ibadan media has tried to hide the fact that there were established decrees in Lagos. It has changed it to decrees. It wasn't decrees before. But let me just read what the person said. Even if it's decrees, still fine. He says here that It says Lagos Ibadan media has tried to hide the fact that there were established decrees in Lagos to seize Igbo-owned properties during the war. They now blame all property confiscation on Rivers State because they too had an abandoned property decree under APIC, Abandoned Property Implementation Committee, after the Civil War. The interesting thing about this whole thing is that this person then put out a document saying there's an administration of abandoned properties 1969, and then he said this thing was put out by the Lagos State House of Assembly on 20th December 1968. Now, first of all, there was no Lagos State House of Assembly in 1968. So that's how you begin to know that these people sometimes, the whole idea is to be a victim, not necessarily to talk about truth or whatever. There was no Lagos State House of Assembly in 1968. That's the first thing. Number two, it's actually true that there was a framework that was put together by the Lagos State government, but it was not to take over people's property. It was actually to help them preserve the property. So I'm going to read my response, and then I'll explain. Here, there was no Lagos State House of Assembly in 1968. It was a military regime, for God's sake. And yes, it is true that there was a framework to help Igbos get their properties back in Lagos, and it worked out. How is that a bad thing? The government took over houses left by fleeing Easterners, mostly Igbos, to prevent them from being vandalized, occupied by illegal squatters, or falling into ruin. To achieve this, an abandoned properties committee was set up to manage the houses, find legitimate tenants, and collect rent on behalf of the absent owners. When the war ended in 1970, the Lagos State government had a record of all rents collected. Governor Mobolaji Johnson famously reported that his administration had collected over £250,000 from about 3,000 managed properties. When the owners of the properties returned to Lagos and provided proof of ownership, they had their houses returned to them, and the government handed over the accumulated rent minus maintenance costs. This helped them restart their lives. Now, sane people would appreciate these gestures. I'll take that again because this is me talking now. Now, I've been talking all the while about that one, we're quoting stuff. Now, sane people would appreciate these gestures. However, if you were raised to be a perpetual victim and an ingrate, you will complain until those who did you a favor wonder if it was worth it in the first place. So why do we do good regardless? Because we were raised to be responsible and fair, unlike those who are conditioned to hate the idea of accountability and responsibility, yet celebrate mediocrity and victimhood as if their lives depended on it. So what happened in Port Harcourt did not happen in Yoruba land. And no, we did not occupy abandoned properties. We helped take care of them. A famous example was Shubomi Balogun of FCMB helping to fix and returning Alex Ekweme's house and rent. Learn to be grateful instead of being an ungrateful, sad, hard-to-please, whining Egbiri. God bless you. By the way, this is from the book by Mobolaji Johnson. I got the facts from the book, Lagos State, My Life of Service with Integrity. Now, we're going to read a number of books today, but this is my introduction. The point is that there are people who left their houses just like they fled during Osu Abiola. They also ran away in 1966. And when they ran home, when they fled, because of what could happen, and then, you had Ojukwu telling everybody to return, so everybody left. So they left their houses unoccupied. And some of those houses, miscreants started occupying the trons, the thugs around, would just go there and, misbehave and stuff. The government then created set up a committee to look after houses that have been abandoned by Easterners that were fleeing to the Eastern region, and then they took care of those houses. Now, the beautiful thing is this: when they returned, and this is what Governor Mobolaji Johnson, and this was not federal government, this was Lagos State. Again, Lagos State was created in 1967, okay? And it was created under a military regime. That was Yakubu Gowon's regime. There is no way on earth there will be a House of Assembly in 1968 with the military in power. These people not lie. Number two, the governor wrote a book and talked about what happened at the time. And he mentioned that about 250 returned to people. They go back to Lagos. Why? Because the houses were taken over by the government or by the committee. They fixed those houses up and rented the houses to people, right? They collected rent, over time. So when the owners of the houses came back, they removed the maintenance costs, right? And then give them the money. About 3,000 houses. Now, also properly raised, and you are not an ingrate, like a cursed person, you would appreciate that gesture. You would say, we left our house uninhabited, we came back, it hasn't gone into disrepair, you have fixed it up, thank you very much. That's what you would say. But it doesn't look like everybody is at the same level of evolution. So that's why you have a person like this go on social media and say things like Yoruba confiscated properties because they had abandoned properties committee. A committee they set up so that the abandoned properties could be occupied and money could be paid to the owners of the spaces. But there was an exception, and I should mention it. The exception was actually Ojukwu. Ojukwu did not get his properties back while others got their properties back. Number one, he was in exile. From 1970 to 1982, Ojukwu was in exile. The people who got their houses back started getting their houses back in 1970. So for those 12 years, it was not even around. When he got pardoned and returned to Nigeria, he began to try to get his property back. So what really happened was this, and he got his properties back, by the way, which it is what it is. I don't want to, it's just, the man didn't pay anything for what he did. Nothing. And it wasn't even his properties, to be fair. It was his father's properties, but, details. Anyway, the point is, Shagari was the president And then after him was Buhari. Ojukwu was still trying to get his properties back, or his father's properties back, which has become his properties. And then you had the Bangida, and eventually got those things back. What I'm going to do is I want to do like a systematic, very, very quickly explanation, read from some books so that you understand how these things actually went down in the north, in the west, and in the former eastern region. So let's quickly start with the book by Professor Isawa Elaigo. It's called Go On, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman. All right, so it says here, we were talking about Ukwabi Asika. I don't want to go back to read it because we've talked about Ukwabi Asika here before. It was one who became the administrator of the East Central State, which is what we now call Southeastern Region. Apart from this appointment of Mr. Asika and giving support to him, Gowon also authorized the establishment of abandoned properties committees in all states to administer and collect rents on all properties belonging to Igbos who had abandoned such properties during the 1966-70 crisis. Many Igbos returned after the war to huge sums of money, which helped to resettle them. So I had quoted the book by Mobolaji Johnson, who was the first governor of Lagos State. Now I'm quoting Gowon's biography, where they're saying that a lot of people actually returned. Right, excuse me. A lot of Igbos returned after the war to huge sums of money, which helped to resettle them. That's what you will do to your brother. And I'm saying this not to people who would read the stuff I read earlier, because somebody read it and sent it to me. I responded and the other one started insulting me. The point is, your people will read this thing and you feel like apologizing to people. You're apologizing for what you are not even guilty of. And it's mostly because we don't care about this history. What's our business? But we should. Even if we, of course, it's not the focus of our lives, but we should know what happens so that you don't end up being made to pay for what you didn't even owe. In your region, Yoruba land, people got their properties back. Even Ojukwu that didn't get it back while he was in exile, eventually got it back under IBB. If we have time, we'll read it. If you want to read how he got it back under IBB, read the book by Professor Ole Soyinka, The Open Soul of a Continent. If there's time, we'll read it. So first, we've read Mobolaji Johnson's book. The book again is titled Lagos State, My Life of Service with Integrity. And now we're reading Go On, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman. I'll take it slowly. Go On, The Biography of a Soldier Statesman by J. Isawa Elaigo. And it says here that Go On authorized the establishment of abandoned properties committees in all states to administer and collect rents on all properties belonging to Igbos who had abandoned such properties during the 1967-70 crisis. Many Igbos returned after the war to huge sums of money, which helped to resettle them. Now, here's where the problem, comes in. In some cases, there were problems of restoration of properties. The Rivers State case vividly demonstrated the residual legacies of pre-war bitterness in the system. Over the years, this issue was taken care of. It is most heartening to note that Gowon's foresight led to the establishment of these committees, which became very useful later. The United States, with over 100 years since Civil War, did not heal its wounds as fast as Nigeria did. I don't know if we've healed that wound, to be honest. I think we concealed the wound. We didn't heal the wound. And this generation should heal that wound. And the way to heal that wound is not that you are hitting the wound to prove a point, but you have to expose the wound. Let the elements work on the wound. It needs breeze. Then you do for spirits, all kinds of things. Let it be open, because they are lying to everybody, and there's no healing. But you've gotten the idea. I'm going to read the third book. Whitey Kubo on YouTube says Ojukwu should have been made to pay for the destruction he unleashed on the Midwest. at Ore at the very minimum. Absolutely. Not Ojukwu alone. The Eastern region. The southeastern region now should have paid for all the destruction that happened in the Midwest. These guys bombed spaces in Ore, in Lagos. Before Lagos State was created, they were bombing places in VI. They were bombing places in Yaba. They were about to bomb UI before they caught them. 10 of them. If you read Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by A.H.M. Kegwin, is there. The kind of thing that people did, and I just let them go. Now, the point is, because nobody did anything, it's as if in their minds, they need us. That's why they didn't do anything to us. Apparently, they are the ones that wronged us. That's why they're forcing over us, and they never. We don't have to acknowledge anything wrong, which is nonsense. And that's one of the problems that Nigeria has. That's one problem that Europe does not have with Germany, for instance. And even the funny thing, when I read about the World War, I felt that was too much. Why would you treat them like this? Apparently, you're talking about people who have read, who have understanding of history and life, who understood the Persian Empire, who knew what happened with the Ottoman Empire, who understood what happened with Roman Empire and Alexander. They knew in Greece. They knew how things should be taken care of. Not that I just say, oh, no victor, no vanquished. That's what we're still suffering today. There was a victor, there was a vanquished. And when you say there's a vanquished, it's not that you are rubbing it in. You are recreating structures. You're not saying, oh, you are bad, we've won you, you always be down. That's unnecessary, it's just childish. But listen, this is where you are now. Okay, we're going to build. This is what it's going to take to build. Let me tell you what happens. In building, that person regains character. You're not punishing, you are helping them. I'm sorry. Nigeria failed Igbos, not in terms of rehabilitation. The most important rehabilitation did not happen, and it's mental. That's why when President Buhari then came along and said that it was going to create psychiatric hospitals in the East, a lot of people thought it was a bad man, that what he said was wrong. It was right. Maybe that was not the time to do it, to be fair. They should have done it earlier. Do you know how young people think? They don't even know what happened, but they are victims. They are automatic victims. Like, they don't have to know. How do I know? This thing I'm responding to, the guy said, Lagos Ibadan media has hidden this from us. They had abandoned properties committee. And now, did they hide anything? No. Did you have abandoned properties committee? Yes. Then he said, they use it to take over our properties. How? Nobody asked for any how. You don't ask how. You just say, oh, they did it to us. Hey, yeah, they're bad people. Automatically, you switch to being a victim, and every other person is the perpetrator of evil. So it doesn't matter what you talk. You could be talking about oil and gas. The victim will be kicking. You could be talking about rice. You could be talking about fair allocation. You could be talking about number of states. It doesn't matter what you're talking about. The person is in a perpetual state of victimhood. And I think that's when Nigeria failed. So when I read this book, the first time I read this book, I just wondered why I understood why he wrote it when he said that, let me read it again. It says here that the United States, with over 100 years since Civil War, did not heal its wound as fast as Nigeria did. We did not heal. Even today, it hasn't healed. And the reason is not because Nigeria was bad. The reason was because Nigeria did not actually put the mirror in front of the average Igbo person and say, look at yourself. This is what you did. Instead of saying, look at yourself, fix up, you are saying, you are so perfect. No victor, no vanquished. We are the same. We are not the same. He just went through trauma. Forget, yes, we built houses. We sent, by the way, people don't know what our parents did. We don't know what our parents did. We should be proud. Churches, individuals sent food, money, clothes to the Southeast. Governments, state governments sent food to the Southeast. Not because they owed them anything, but because Ojulon Roju Shano is compassion. And that's normal, and that's right. But the people that your parents sent all those things come to you and tell you that, see what you did to us. What did I do to you? Am I the one that said you should go to war? Did anybody put a gun to your head and say you must fight? Did they not beg you not to go to war? But you have no leader, none of your leaders, should be answerable. You should be asking me what Awo did. Something's wrong with you. Awo did the best thing any human could. In fact, I don't even know how many humans could do what Awo did. And Gowon tried, but there was a victor and there was a vanquished. I'm going to read another book this time, where I'm going to read Shagari's Beckon to Serve. And then, if time permits, I'm going to read There Was a Country by Chinua Achebe, because it's better to also listen to an able man. Let's listen to Chinua Achebe first. I've said it several times. His book is propaganda. There Was a Country, and I am not sorry to say it. It's one of those things that you read and you wonder, why would you leave this world and leave a legacy of victimhood? Young people will read this book and will feel bad. I'm not saying there's nothing true in it. A lot of truths are shared in it. The sufferings were real, but the positioning, everything was said from the perspective of, see what they did to us. There was, maybe because I'm Yoruba, we've had wars amongst ourselves, and you will ask, what did this person do? What did that person do? And the reason is also that you can blame the person. The reason is so that you can learn not to make that mistake. You have a book that just, and that's not the only one. The other one, Trouble with Nigeria, everything is everybody else's problem, and everybody has a problem with the Igbos. And then you put that into the world, just as you're about to leave the world, and you have young people reading that book. Anyway, but to be fair, he has some things to say, but everything is victim story. But it's a shame, Sha, because you expect that people... I'm stopping myself because some things one shouldn't say. Let's read Achebe's book, There Was a Country. So this is in this part of the book, actually, there's a man called Penny Johnson who interviewed General Gowon, and Achebe decided to publish that in There Was a Country. And a lot of things they said, I don't want to go into everything, just to stick to this whole idea of abandoned property. So this is what Penny Jason said. Another issue was that of abandoned property, especially in Rivers State, and the context in which your government allows some property belonging to the Igbo to be taken over. The case was made by the new Rivers State government that its people were like tenants in their own state. After you left office, it became clear that several individuals actively exploited the issue, buying up former Igbo-owned property and using these properties as collaterals for business ventures, often obtaining loans from banks controlled by certain people with anti-Igbo sentiments. Many blame this series of developments around abandoned property on you. What is your reaction? This is what Gowon said. There was no doubt that it was a very naughty issue, naughty being Knotty. I think there should be, I'll tell that again, there was no doubt that it was a very naughty issue. I think there should have been justice and fair play, and as far as I was concerned, although pressure was being brought by the governor and the government of Rivers State at the time, my position was if any property was to be taken for the use of the government, it had to pay proper compensation. And true enough, I think at the time there were many Igbo who wanted to sell their property. Please pay attention now. We read Gowon's biography. Now we're reading Gowon's response. I'll respond to your comment later. As far as I was concerned, although pressure was being brought by the governor and the government of Rivers State at the time, my position was if any property was to be taken for the use of the government, it had to pay proper compensation. And true enough, I think at the time there were many Igbo who wanted to sell their property. Therefore, there was hardly any problem from that point of view. What is it saying here? It's saying that there were properties in Port Harcourt or in River State, excuse me, that were sold by Igbos to government and others. So he says, but I know that later the River State indigenes themselves became fully involved and virtually pressurized the subsequent government. I think honestly that a lot of the damage was not done during our time. At least we were keeping it under control and working hard to ensure that there was justice. Since it was one Nigeria, we must allow people who wanted to come back to at least come back to their business and properties. But I know that quite a lot of this did not happen. Subsequently, I'll tell that again, but I know that quite a lot of this did not happen subsequently, and it left a very bad feeling that, as you said, the Igbo were being penalized because of the war. Actually, they should have been penalized because of the war. So this is the problem. There's something I try not to get deeply involved in when it comes to this whole thing about River State, and it's because the day I will talk about the whole thing about River State, I want Yoruba people to be there because now they matter. So I may not want to get into how the people acquired properties there in the first place and how that affected everything. But actually, okay, no, maybe I'll talk about it briefly. Two things, let me say it this way. Two things I think affected the whole reverse stuff. Number one, during the war, Biafran forces, Igbos, burnt buildings belonging to Rivers people and Akwa Ibom people and CO. Let's just say that they burnt houses belonging to COR people. That's Cross River or Goja Rivers provinces. So Akwa Ibom people, Cross River people, Rivers people, they burned their houses. That's number one. You find it in a book by Graham Douglas. It's called Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion. If you join Redomi Global now, you can access that book free of charge. Okay, you're not gonna have to pay for it. And the reason we put that on the Telegram channel, Redomi Global, we put it out because number one, the book is not available. You can't find it, but at least you can all read what's it called, the e-version. So please take advantage of it. The second part, and I'm already talking about it. 1 second, please. All right. So the first thing is, if you read Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion by Nebo Graham Douglas, he mentioned how houses belonging to folk across River States, houses belonging to folks like that were burnt down by Igbo soldiers during Biafran War in their region. That's one. Maybe they're not using that one to take over their own property. You can ask them. The second one is that some of the properties, the way they were acquired, also left a bitter taste in people's mouth. So there was money belonging to. It's a different topic on its own, to be honest. But just very quickly, the money belonged to the eastern region. You could take loans to buy houses or lands, and folks complained that it seemed that the folks who had access to the loans were almost exclusively Igbos. And so they had the financial muscle to now move into their spaces to buy up lands that they could not buy because they had no access to those loans, even though the money that was being loaned out belonged to the region and they were all members or part of the region. Is that enough justification to now hold on to other people or seize properties belonging to other people? I'm not justifying anything. I'm just explaining what their reasons have been. I'm trying not to go into books because it's going to take us off of this. So that's why they said, it's our land after all, and the way you even got this thing was fraudulent. That was their own explanation. But what Gowon said in that interview that we just read from Chinua Achebe's book is that some of those properties that the government took over, the government itself took over in River State, the government paid for it, by buying it off Igbos wanted to sell. But it doesn't change the fact that a lot of places were also taken over by folks in River State. And that just give you, what I just did now is give you a very quick example of some of their reasons, right? Or what could be the reasons for doing what they did. We're going to come back to River State. You know what? Let's since we're on Port Harcourt now, let me read some things about Port Harcourt. Then we're going to go to the book by Shagari later. Give me a second. So where you have the most contention was actually in Rivers State. Give me a second, please. Okay. So it says some individuals exploited the situation by buying these properties at market rates or using them as collateral for business loans from sympathetic banks. So what they're saying is that there were people from those areas who, those guys were a crazy one, who claimed the properties and then drew up some form of documentation and then took the documents to some banks, certain banks, to obtain loans. So the property then went to the banks as collateral. Guys, you can say whatever you want, but let me tell you something. If people come to your land and they begin to do win the war meat, when the war is over, you will also find a way to get your own pound of flesh. That's the truth. We cannot pontificate and have moral arguments about these things, but you went into their land, you killed them in their own land, you fed them with their own flesh. After what happened before the war, you now went back to the place and said that you are the same, you are brothers. Okay. I don't want to stay on rivers, to be honest. We'll have a reverse session later. Let's get into what happened in other parts of Nigeria. So I'm going to read a book called Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria. I mentioned it earlier. This document was from 8 October 1969. I observed also the business-like manner in which the state governments handle the properties of displaced persons. It was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the River State, Southeastern State, and East Central State. Again, River State is presently Rivers and Bayelsa States. Southeastern State is presently Akwa Ibom and Cross River State. East Central State is presently Abia, Anambra, Ebonyi, Imo, and Enugu States. So Southeastern State at the time is different from Southeastern region today. So it says here, I'm going to go about from the beginning. It says it was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the River State, Southeastern State, and the East Central States, which are just finding their feet administratively. Comprehensive records were kept, which indicated the name of the owner, valuation, location, address, and rent receivable for each property. Abandoned properties committees were established to take custody of this. The damaged ones were repaired, and having been made tenantable, they were rented out, and their rents collected were put together in a fund administered by the appropriate local authority. After deducting legitimate expenses in respect of repairs and maintenance, including commissions to realtors, the balance was credited to the accounts of owners to await their return. This means that in certain cases, some of the displaced persons had earned from £100 to £1,500 held in trust for them by the various state governments. In Kano, for example, £83,000 was collected. In most of the northern states, over £40,000 was collected. The same holds good for Western State, Midwestern State, and Lagos State. From the above, I am fair and reasonable in concluding that the intention of the government concerned is to give assurance to displaced persons that not only are their persons safe and secure, but their properties are also intact, with some accumulated earnings in addition. Therefore, it is not far-fetched for me to continue to appeal to the displaced Igbo and non-Igbo people to return to the Federation instead of their wandering in the bush aimlessly like vagabonds, running from place to place without comfortable shelter and sufficient food to eat. I think the fact that this didn't just happen in Lagos. Lagos was about £250. Kano was about £83,000. So what they're saying, they're explaining the system and how they made it work. So the government created an abandoned properties committee. They took over those properties, fixed them up, rented the apartments out, made money, and deposited the money after deducting expenses, realtors and for maintenance and things like that. Deposited the money so that when the Igbo person returns to Yoruba land, it's not just Lagos, Western region, Midwest, Lagos, North. When they returned, they found their properties well kept, but beyond that, they also had money waiting for them. I would think, anybody that experienced that kind of goodwill would be appreciative and say, oh, these people are good because they're trying to also welcome me back home. One second, there's something I'm holding back on, but I want to be sure. Give me a second. There's a small little information I'm not sure of. Number, and that information has to do with the person who is actually talking, because this is actually an interview. I was right. It was Zeke speaking. It was Zeke speaking. I wasn't sure, but I'm glad I'm sure about it now. It was Zeke speaking. This was 8th October 1969. Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria, Volume 2 by A.H.M. Kirk-Green. Someone says, I beg, who rented these properties? Because Igbo said they were the richest and owners of Lagos. No, some of them also owned houses. So the point is, the governments of the regions took over the houses, fixed them up, rented out those houses to people. When Igbos came back, the houses were in good condition, and there was also money. There was money waiting for them. So, I've read from Gowon's perspective. I've read Brigadier Mobolaji Johnson's perspective, and I'm reading Zeke's perspective because at this time, in the beginning, Zeke was not on the Nigerian side, but he's now reporting that having moved over from Biafra into Nigeria, he noticed what Nigeria was doing about the properties that the Igbos left when they returned to the eastern region. And just in case you're just coming in, I think I'm going to read it. I'm going to have a full session on this later, though, but I'm just going to focus on this one for now. Let me go back to the like 2 paragraphs before the one I read earlier. It says, my considered opinion after my observations is that there is a genuine desire which is widespread throughout Nigeria for the following changes. Number 1, restoration of peace in Nigeria, whose territorial integrity shall be preserved intact, and so on and so forth. Number 2, reconciliation of Nigeria with what is left of rebel-held territory, and so on and so forth. Number 3, restitution to all Nigerians, including the rebels, without any distinction or discrimination. That was a mistake Nigeria should not have made, but we made it. Because even Buhari still paid Biafran soldiers, believe it or not. Buhari did this one, not in 1983. I'm saying in 2015 that I just returned. In the term that he had 2015 to 2023, he paid Biafran soldiers. I don't know why people don't mention this goodwill, these good things. Folks just like the idea of, see what they did to me. Buhari paid Biafran soldiers. These were rebels. Anyway. Number 4, rehabilitation of all Nigerians, including the rebels, for losses. I'll take that again. Rehabilitation of all Nigerians, including the rebels, for losses sustained by them, either through death or injury or destruction of property during the Civil War. All the heads of government and natural rulers, that's our Oba, together with other distinguished personalities, including those in authority, made it clear to me, who is me, Zeke, they made it clear to me that they desired the Igbo and non-Igbo displaced persons to return to their places of domicile and resume their normal activities. They gave assurance that they shall be secure in their persons and in their properties. This strengthened my faith in the emergence of a new Nigeria that will be united, indivisible. He's always using that phrase. I mean, those words, but let's just read what he had to say. So he's talking about the emergence of a new Nigeria that will be united, indivisible, indestructible, and perpetual. By the way, in case you are hearing me for the first time, the reason I have a problem with Zeke saying this thing in 1969 is that the reason for the war was what he's saying. This phrase, these words, indivisible, perpetual, indissoluble, these words were the words they used in 1954 at the Constitutional Conference when Awo suggested the inclusion of secession clause in the Nigerian Constitution. Zik was shouting, indivisible, indissoluble. We are still here. But anyway, that's what he said at the time. Let's continue. We are still reading Zik's account. The Federal Public Service Commission assured me most solemnly that all displaced persons who left their employment either in the public service or in the diplomatic service or in the service of statutory bodies as a result of the Civil War shall be reinstated, and they were, by the way, and their period of absence shall be officially treated as leave without pay. I was assured that the promotion prospects of those concerned will not be adversely affected. They would enjoy the benefits of an innovation now introduced as notional promotion. Nigeria bent backwards for these guys, which is good if you are doing it for people that can acknowledge good. Where were we? I observed also the business-like manner in which the state government handled the properties of displaced persons. It was at Benin that this system was first explained to me, but it is widespread in all the states of the Federation, excepting the River State. I mentioned earlier, that's River State, present River State and Bayelsa State. Southeastern states, that's present the Akwa Ibom State and Cross River State. And East Central states, that's Abia, Enugu, Anambra, Ebonyi, and Imo State, which are just finding their feet administratively. In other words, the old Eastern region was just getting back, on their feet at the time. But while the old Eastern region in the three states were now getting themselves back together, comprehensive records were kept in the other regions, as in the north, in the west, in Lagos, and in the Midwest. Comprehensive records were kept, which indicated the name of the owner, valuation of the property, location, address, and rent receivable for each property. Abandoned property committees were established to take custody of this. The damaged ones were repaired, and having been made tenantable, they were rented out, and the rents collected were pooled together in a fund administered by the appropriate local authority. After deducting legitimate expenses in respect of repairs and maintenance, including commissions to realtors, the balance was credited to the accounts of the owners to await their return. This means that in certain cases, some of the displaced persons had earned from £100 to £1,500 held in trust for them by the various state governments. In Kano, for example, £83,000 was collected. In most of the northern states, over £40,000 was collected. The same holds good for Western State, Midwestern State, and Lagos State. From the above, by the way, in Lagos State, according to Governor Mobolaji Johnson, they got £250,000 for Igbos who were returning to Lagos. And they had fixed up or administered 3,000 properties belonging to them at the time. Yet, no gratitude. Anyway, from the above, I am fair and reasonable in concluding that the intention of the government concerned is to give assurance to displaced persons that not only are their persons safe and secure, but their properties are also intact with some accumulated earnings in addition. Therefore, it is not far-fetched for me to continue to appeal to the displaced Igbo and non-Igbo people to return to the Federation instead of their wandering in the bush aimlessly like vagabonds, running from place to place without comfortable shelter and sufficient food to eat. When was this? 8 October 1969. Even the Kano, where they were very angry with them, they still collected £83,000. I just think it's better to be appreciative, to be grateful, than to be an ingrate. You have been so good to me. Lord, I can't believe. I'm going to read another book. I have a number of books open, so I'm just looking at the time. That's the reason. If you notice, I'm Motinkpe. But we're still going to read a few more things before we go. I want to read something to you from Just Before Dawn by Kole Omotosho. By the way, Just Before Dawn is considered a faction. In other words, it's a mix of facts and fiction, but it's a brilliant book. You know, let me just read something here for you. So it says, my brother is also right when he asks if we are safe. We do not know. As far as the problem of abandoned property is concerned, it seems that the different governments have made different arrangements for safeguarding the property. In the north, for instance, committees have been set up to look after the property, to collect rent on them and bank them so that they can be given to the owners when they return. And in Lagos, what arrangement is being made in Lagos? I am not too sure, but it would seem as if the same thing was being done in Lagos as was being done in the north. Sebastian paused and then remembered that he had on the radio only a few hours after the end of the war. Nobody who had evidence of the ownership of any property would lose the property. That is the position all over the country. I'll read that slowly. Nobody who had evidence of their ownership of any property would lose the property. That is the position all over the country. If you had evidence, you know what I think? I think some people want to take over their brother's properties in Yoruba land. They now ask them for evidence. They didn't have evidence. Now telling everybody that Yoruba people are tribalistic and bigot because they didn't give them their houses. That has to be it. Someone says, Miss Moson says, oh, good to see you, ma. Says, my question is, can the Igbos be kind to other states as they were kind to them, if such happened? I even want to ask, when they chased out the Northerners, Yoruba people, by the way, you know Ojukwu did that, by the way. We don't talk about it a lot, but it happened. Ojukwu chased out every non-Igbo person. In the beginning, they said everybody was not from the eastern region. But if you were Igbo from the Midwest, you could stay. If you were Benin, Ishan, Yoruba, Urobo, Hausa, out. Chased everybody out. This was in 1966. End of 1966. October, November 1966. Drove non-Igbos out. And his excuse was that he could not guarantee their safety. But in reality, what he did was he chased them out so he could provide a space for the Igbos that were returning. Where did I get that from? From the book by his own Attorney General of the Eastern Region, Nebo Graham Douglas. He wrote a book called Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion. That the idea was basically to create a vacuum for the folks who were returning from other parts of Nigeria. But he said, Nebo Graham Douglas said, the miscalculation that he told him that it was miscalculating because the people who were the Igbos were not as many as the Igbos who were returning. But non-Igbos were chased out of the Eastern region. But they allowed Igbos from the Midwest to remain. So the question you asked, the properties that those people owned before they were chased out, did Igbos return those properties to them? The Hausas, Yorubas. We should be asking questions in this country. It's not one-sided. You have been so good to me. Lord, I can't believe how you love me. Mm-hmm. You know what? I think we should have another part of this thing. You know why? There were two types of property. One belonged to fleeing civilians. Another one belonged to public officials who were found guilty of corruption. And that actually happened under Murtala Mohammed, during Murtala Mohammed era. And I think sometimes they conflate the two, and they do it intentionally, because Murtala Mohammed came much later, 75. So it wasn't even what happened at the same time, but they intentionally mix it up just to be able to, if you want to be a victim, you have to be a victim. Let's stick to the one that has to do with 1967 to 1970 so that we don't start something that I can't finish. Let's read Shagari's book. You have been so good to me. God, I can't believe. Where were we? Good. Okay, let's begin with this. This is Shagari. The book is called Beckon to Serve. It was while I was at the conference that an official announcement of my appointment as Federal Commissioner for Economic Development, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction, I have to slow down. It was while I was at the conference, there was a conference in Tunis that he went to take part of. It was while I was at the conference that an official announcement of my appointment as Federal Commissioner of Economic Development, Rehabilitation and Reconstruction was made in Lagos. On my return to Lagos, I proceeded straight to Sokoto without reporting to General Gowon, so as to register my displeasure at the manner in which my appointment had been handled. Governor Farouk later urged me to overlook the matter and said that Gowon wanted me back in Lagos urgently to assume my new duties. I have made my point and therefore agreed to return to work. My tasks were made immeasurably easy since the second development plan had already been approved and its implementation had also started. At the core of my ministry's functions were post-war rehabilitation and reconstruction of the eastern states, which had been badly ravaged by the war. Besides the huge funds and efforts expended by the Gowon regime on relief and rehabilitation, massive aid in the form of food, medications, clothing, building materials, and various other assistance were provided by foreign governments, multilateral organizations, and non-governmental relief agencies, local and foreign, including some churches, including governments. State governments across Nigeria contributed food and clothing and medicine and sent to their brothers, right? Which is what you should do when your brother is in need. But those so-called brothers now say that your father did something and you're apologizing for nothing. You shouldn't. The British government and provided over 100 beds for to do with abandoned property very quickly. One problem that proved intractable was the issue of landed properties left behind by Igbo returnees to the former eastern region. The Rivers State, and especially its capital of Port Harcourt, where almost all the houses and 4/5 of the skilled jobs were hitherto owned and held by the Igbo, presented the most difficulties. Followed by the southeastern state, again, Ẹkáàbọ and Cross River. The inhabitants of this area tenaciously resisted every attempt to return the so-called abandoned properties to their original Igbo owners. As former Eastern region minorities with deep-seated antipathy towards Igbo hegemony, they probably wanted to gain some advantage in their new state, at least temporarily free from Igbo competition. Following the intervention of the federal government, a few of the houses were restored to their owners, but many were nevertheless taken over by the governments of the two states in question. Although successive federal governments have tried to ensure the payment of compensation for the sequestrated properties, this has not been fully resolved, even as at the time of this publication. By contrast, authorities in the northern states arranged for rents on all Igbo properties to be paid into official bank accounts, which were then paid to their owners on their return after the war. The properties themselves were also eventually returned to their owners. The question of compensation did not therefore arise in the northern states. So, we read about the north, the west, the midwest, and the east. And from everything we've read, where the Igbos had a problem with abandoned properties not being returned to them was in the former eastern region. And again, I don't do this because I want to say, oh, see what we did, gloat. That's childish. But we should be informed because we are constantly subjected to falsehood in the hopes that we would have to concede certain things to certain people because we're trying to make up for what our folks, our parents supposedly did to their parents during the war. You know, I was thinking about, and I came to the conclusion that the only reason that a person will be able to blackmail you to surrendering what's yours is either because you are ignorant or you are naive. And if it's ignorance, it's fine. We will all study so we can know what's happening. If it's naivety, please fix it. Nigeria is not a place where, you know, everybody is, you know, great. And it's good to assume that people are good until they show you pepper. The idea basically is that your fathers helped people because they were good people, and they did it because they expected that those people that were coming back, you know, would have something to fall back on. The 20 pounds they gave, folks see insult Awolowo for it, even though their fathers were not owed anything by Awolowo or by Nigeria. The 20 pounds was an ex gratia payment that should not have been paid. Ex gratia means that it's a gift. But you see people saying they gave us 20 pounds as though they want to share 20, as if the 20 pounds was reward. Right? It was a gift that did not have to be given. You have cases of millions of Nigerian pounds put into banks, whether it was the African Continental Bank or the Cooperative Bank for Eastern Nigeria, where Awo himself intentionally made sure that money was deposited. If you read his own interview during the 1983 campaign, he mentioned about 3.5 million pounds. If you read the book by J. Sawa Elagu, Go On, the biography of a soldier statesman, they mentioned 5 million pounds between those two banks, deposited there so that people could be able to access it and start their businesses. Nobody acknowledges those things. Nobody tells you that, oh, 990,000 pounds went to the Eastern region on a monthly basis as subvention. Nobody tells you that Awo kept all the money that should have gone to the Eastern region, right, as allocations while the war was on, and he gave it to the administrator. You know, last week, somebody said, oh, Gowon did not help a particular person that created a vaccine in the Eastern region, but that they got money from Ukwabi Asika. So I said, so where did Ukwabi Asika get the money that he gave that doctor from? Ukwabi Asika got it from Gowon and Awo. He didn't just get the money from the skies or from the air. It was something that was given by folks at the top. People have to learn to acknowledge good and acknowledge greatness and just be grateful. It doesn't reduce you. So if you can't talk about the 20 pounds with gratitude, you can't talk about the money that was given to your state governments with gratitude, you can't talk about the fact that the government chose to deposit money in banks so that your parents will be able to access those money as loans from those banks, not to return to government too, so that the banks could also work. They'll take the loans and start businesses and hopefully return to the bank so other people can have access to the loans much later. You don't talk about that. You don't talk about the fact that money was given to the regions. You talk about the fact that people, regular citizens, contributed food and clothing and stuff to help your people. And I'm saying this to Yoruba people especially, and to all Nigerians. Love everybody, but know what your parents did. When it came to houses in the Western region, not just Lagos, across Western region, were refurbished, rented out, money was collected, and the money was given to the people who owned the buildings when they returned. In Lagos State alone, about 3,000 houses were so kept, and 250,000 pounds given to Igbos who returned. I say, if you read the book Lagos State, My Service by John, you'll find details there. And the one that Zik said in 1969, about 83,000 pounds was given to Igbos returning to Kano. This was end of 1969, just before the war was over. So the point is, love everyone, but know what your parents do, so that when they come with this nonsense, you know exactly how to respond. Like, I have no problems with you, but don't tell me to apologize for what Ojukwu should be doing. And the most painful part, that's the one I don't want to read because of time, but if I have time, maybe I'll even read it. The most painful part is that Ojukwu or Daratu Daogbesile did not lose any property. And he was the one who taught you guys to be lying to everybody that, oh, they collected our property from us. Ojukwu was, let me not use that phrase. He was very close, almost doing whatever he had to do to get this property. I eventually got it from Bangida. Let me quickly read something to you from. There are two books. I'll read one. I don't think I can read the other for now, but if I have time, and I'm saying if I have time because our committee I have to be out like soon. We'll be here tomorrow, 4 p.m. if a time West African time. So please join us. I'll quickly read something to you from Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odiel Feimon. I've read it here before. It's a very good book. You should get it. Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odiel Feimon. It says here, it's a very short line. The other Kimi Gogon is in Shoyinka's book. He says the general of the People's Army, referring to Ojukwu, the general of the People's Army had to wait till as late as the last week of General Ibrahim Babangida in office in 1993 to wrest his own abandoned property. We don't know about those who never had that luck. We don't know about the soldiers who could not get their pensions after the general got his own. It is the way the post-Civil War atomization of demands got covered up. Oh, sorry, take that again. It is the way the post-Civil War atomization of demands got covered up by a rev of self-interest that many like to present as the interest of the whole nationality. The truth is that those whom things happened, take that again. The truth is that those to whom things happened and who hardly had a chance of happening to anything but suffered all the same never had champions. The point he's trying to say is that it was the very last week of Ibrahim Babangida's tenure that Ojukwu was able to get everything that belonged to him in terms of the properties that his father had. And since I mentioned the other book, it may take me a while. That's why I didn't want to open it, because I'm going to have to find it here. The open sore. Since I've mentioned it, I might as well look for it. The Open Sore of a Continent. This is a book by Professor Wole Soyinka. This is what he said. I wish I could read everything, because this particular section is called The Reversible Ikemba. Let me read parts of it and I'll go. A sprinkling of intellectuals, a predictable section of the political class, moldy, call me comrade radicals of the mold of Ojukwu Merije and rehabilitated secessionists somehow found congenial to their individual ambitions. Since Biafra is a well-known subject in these parts, and the name Pate and Bed of Odumegwu Ojukwu, the leader of the breakaway enclave, did attain iconic dimensions in universal imagination at par with the images of swollen kwashiorkor bellies of Biafran children, this recent history will be incomplete without tributes being paid to him for his role in these various machinations. Now I'm going to jump every other thing he did to focus on this old building stuff. Upholding the results of the elections, talking about the 1993 elections that Babangida was planning to cancel, which he eventually cancelled, by the way. No, let me start from this point. It was not really acting out of character when the Ikemba, who is Ikemba? Ojukwu. When the Ikemba began a series of courtesy visits to Babangida to express solidarity with him and to salute his courage in cancelling the 1993 elections. That's why, when Peter Obi was saying that Igbos lost after the elections, that they supported Abiola, I was like, even
no, sorry, from I don't know where King Ibe came again. Maybe from the north. When Tofa had an Igbo man as vice presidential candidate, a respected Igbo man, yet Abiola won. And when that election was annulled, go and check the principal and people who actually lost more in Nedeko. It is the Igbos. We lost more in Nedeko. It is Raf whose business were ruined. go and check it.
When Peter Obi was saying that Igbos lost after the elections that they supported Abiola, I was like, even your Lord and Savior was telling Babangida that he did the right thing by cancelling the elections. And when the time of Abacha, when Abacha became head of state, what did Ojukwu tell Abacha to do? He told him to hang Abiola. When this video comes out, right, I'm going to put the image of the newspaper clipping there. You will see it. It was not really acting out of character when the Ikemba began a series of courtesy visits to Babangida to express solidarity with him and to salute his courage in cancelling the 1993 elections. Upholding the results of the election, he declared, I'll tell that again, upholding the results of the elections, he declared, would have plunged the country into chaos, for it would have signaled a return to ethnic politics. The Ikemba's voice was also to be heard on the BBC, hysterically expounding the same thesis. In other words, he didn't say this in a room. This is not a rumor. Ojukwu was on BBC to tell the world that if they did not cancel the elections, Nigeria will be thrown into chaos and we'll go back to ethnic politics. The Ikemba's voice was also to be heard on the BBC, hysterically expounding the same thesis, backed by a species of logical proceeding that was anchored, it would appear, on the fact that Moshood Abiola's own people, the Yoruba, voted en masse for him. Never a mention by the Ikemba that Abiola also defeated his opponent in his own home base, or that he also scored handsomely among Ojukwu's own Igbo people. That was in Anambra State. But does any of this matter? Basharu MK Abiola won unambiguously, according to every rule prescribed by the National Electoral Commission. Perhaps, this is where we're going, perhaps Ojukwu's recovered patriotism is best understood by the fact that in the midst of the post-annulment crisis, Ibrahim Babangida actually found time to perform a magnanimous act of redress for wrongs long committed against our ethnic champion. One of the very last acts of the outgoing dictator was to sign a decree virtually on the eve of his departure from Aso Rock, restoring to Ojukwu the landed properties that he had somehow forfeited or had been acquired by the Lagos State after the Civil War. We read that from this book, The Open Soul of a Continent by Shoyinka, and also from Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of Nigerian Civil War by Odell Feynman. If there's any, the truth is, if there's anyone you want to be angry with, that's is Ojukwu. Don't bring your one-on-one to Yoruba people. And Yoruba people, again, you have no reason to apologize to anybody. Love everyone, respect everyone, but your parents owe nobody nothing. And Ojukwu got his properties, but he didn't lose nothing in terms of material stuff. The man went, I don't know if you call it exile or whatever, returns and began to, he returned and began to support the same people he said he was going to war with, Shagari and NPN folks. It is well. You know the shame in all of these things. When this guy, after leading a lot of people to their death, when he returned in 1982, he returned to a hero's welcome. And those who celebrated him are the ones who tell you that your leaders are not good, and you believe them. Let's think well as Yoruba people, as Nigerians generally. Again, this is not an attack on anybody, but we cannot allow lies fester. Prophet Remi says it was because of his properties that Ojukwu supported the annulment of the June 12th election. Yes. It was there until a week or so to the end of IBB's tenure. He now got that property back. That was it. As far as the property was concerned, Nigeria, they could hang MKO. They could forget about the freest and fairest election in Nigeria's history. It's just how to get these properties back. So the point is, we didn't have any abandoned property issue in Yoruba land. People got their properties back. People should be grateful to those who do them good, so that, you know, if you show yourself to be an ingrate, it'll be very difficult for people to actually do you a favor next time. It's just the way of the world. It's just natural. Those who took over houses, primarily in River State, did so for the reasons that we highlighted earlier, which I don't want to repeat. Yoruba people, be proud. You're not perfect. You're not perfect people, to be clear. But we have nothing to apologize for, because our fathers did their best. And their best was, by any standard, those men were heads and shoulders above most people. But thank you very much for listening to that. All right, thank you very much for listening. I hope you learned something. Okay, that was the abandoned property lie, how the West, North, and Midwest saved Igbo houses. A lot of us may not know these things, but it's important that we know these things. Like I always say, we don't share this stuff in order to gloat and say, oh, see what we did for you guys and all those things. No, that's not the point. But the point is, you should know what happened, so that when ingrates come to you to try to blackmail you and guilt trip you with nonsense, you know exactly how to respond. You can't do that, because I owe you nothing. And that is not me being inconsiderate. That is actually me acting like a properly raised Yoruba person, right? Anything else is the action of a bastard, not of a considerate person. Okay, so that's that about that. I noticed we had a couple of people who were trying to come up. We'll bring them up and then we'll hear them out before we call it a day. So there's Dr. Badru and there's Morris Ayo. Please come on, as soon as you get up, please mute so that we don't. Dr. Badru, are you there? I guess not. Hello, Morris Ayo. Good evening. Hello? Okay. Maybe it was a mistake. All right. So I'm just going to read some of the things we have in the comment section. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. We'll, speak to those things before we call it a day. By the way, we have the sessions every weekday, Monday to Friday, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. So we'll be here tomorrow, and we'll be listening to somebody whose name I won't tell you now, but is an elder that, like I said, once a week we try to learn directly from our elders. We draw inspiration from them, learn wisdom from them. And last week we listened to Chief Bolage. The week before last we listened to Chief SLA. That's Samuel Kakintola. Tomorrow we're going to listen to someone like that again. So please join us tomorrow, 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. All right, I'm just going to go through the comment section. I'll respond to, maybe questions or thoughts, and then call it today. All right, so let's start with Ojukwu says, I heard of the story of Shubomi Balogun and Alex Ekweme. Yes, that's actually, it's famous because they were larger than life, and Alex Ekweme eventually turned out to become, it turned out to become the vice president of Nigeria 9 years after the Civil War, which by the way, was a very intentional thing. It was one of the things that your parents did if you're Nigerian. One of the things that your parents did was to ensure that an Igbo person was on the ticket, right? On every major party's ticket in 1978-79. Okay? So in case people want to, you've got to remember this. That election had Igbos on every ticket. So the vice presidential candidate for MPN was Igbo. That was Alex Ekweme, was vice president to Shagari. NPP had Azikiwe himself as the presidential candidate. It was Igbo. And then UPN, the Unity Party of Nigeria, had Philip Omiadi as vice president and Papa Awolowo as the presidential candidate. So every major ticket had an Igbo person, either as a presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate. And this was 9 years after the war, we had an Igbo vice president in Nigeria. That's why some of our elders thought that, okay, we've healed the wounds. Now we can move on. The mistake they made is that they assumed that, what they were doing was actually helping the mental state of the people. You see, if they had done that without the continuation of the propaganda from the war, I think would have had a better nation in terms of, the reaction or the attitudes of people about Nigeria or towards Nigeria. But what happened really was that regardless of all the goodwill and, the good gestures, folks have been battered in their minds, and they're so battered that they can't say anything good. Even right now, the propaganda is still on, 56 years after the war. And for folks from the Southeast, listen, nobody really has your time like I hate you, somebody hates you. That's just a waste of time. The real issue is this. You have not healed yet, all right? And the real problem is, and I think one of the reasons for that, like I said in the video, was also Nigeria's attitude towards the Igbos. So for Nigeria, as a government, they were thinking of rehabilitation and reconstruction, not just everything to make sure they're better and all of those things, but they didn't look at the mental aspect of everything. And when I say mental, I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I'm just saying that you can't come out of that kind of situation, right? And people assume that once you declare no victor, no vanquished, the person will be okay mentally. And then you leave them open to the propaganda that has never stopped, right? It has never stopped. So Nigeria was doing the best they could as far as physical stuff was concerned, building schools, also stuff that could be emotional in the sense that, okay, let's give them a sense of belonging. But that damage that was done to folks with the propaganda, it never come out. Now, that's why you talk to people, right? Me, I don't even waste my time anymore, to be honest. If I present facts and data and all of those things, it's not because I'm trying to convince people of anything. It's an absolute waste of time. They don't care. Your fast could be in sheets long from here to heaven. The point is, victimhood is a religion, okay, and they are committed to it. So nobody is trying to change your mind. That's a waste of time. I've come to learn that. But I think your people should know, and Nigerians generally should know exactly what happened, right? So that people just don't find it very easy to blackmail you into doing stuff. So back to what the gentleman said. Alex Akweme's house, was taken over by Shubumba Logun because the house was being taken. I'm using the word taken over again. Anyway, people were hoodlums, right? Were occupying the building, and then it was going to disrepair. He took over the house, fixed it up, rented it out, and collected rent. And when Ekweme go back after the war, returned the money and the house. But that was just an example. It was the most famous example, but it happened in 3,000 cases. According to the governor of Lagos State at the time, Governor Mobolaji Johnson, 3,000 cases. 250,000 pounds was handed over to Igbos when they returned to Lagos. 83,000 pounds was handed over to them when they returned to Kaduna. The same thing in Benin, in the Midwest, despite what they did in Benin. In Benin, Ojukwu's boys actually set up concentration camps where they had the Midwest people and Hausa people dealt with them very well. They killed a lot of people. They killed Yoruba people in the Midwest. I mean, we've got to talk about these things. Again, not to say you are bad, but you cannot be going around the place shouting they did this to me, as though you are this spotless divine being that people hate for your existence. Like, you don't really count that much. The point is, how do you explain a group of people that go to a lepers colony at a place called Osiomo River, present-day Edo State. Go to the lepers colony. On this side, you have the Igbos. On the other side, you have Edo, Yoruba, and other people. You cross the water, the river, and you kill lepers. Who are Yoruba and Edo? You kill them plenty, as many as you could. Republic of Benin. Well, to be fair, when Nigerian forces entered later, they also dealt with the Igbo side. 2 gave 4. That's why Thomas Sukun Igberi Lagos State, Bende State. Well, Bende State came much later. At this time, it was just Midwest region. This was 1966. But even then, you know, with everything that happened there, they still helped maintain their buildings. And how do I know that? By reading the speech that Azikiwe gave in December of 1969. He talked about the fact that it was in Benin that he learned about the Abandoned Properties Commission and how it worked. And by the way, the guy who was lamenting on Twitter, who actually got me into this whole conversation, he said, oh, in Lagos, they had Abandoned Properties Committee, therefore, they stole our properties. That's stupid. So because there's a Abandoned Properties Commission or committee in River State and they stole your, therefore, everywhere you hear the word Abandoned Properties Committee is because they want to see your property. They literally kept your properties. But you wouldn't know because your folks are probably hopping trees. That's another thing. These guys, many of the people that are crying all over the place were tree hoppers. Like, they had no idea what it meant to have buildings anywhere. So there was nobody in their family to tell them anything about it. They just go back into some weird trauma and project it onto other people. He didn't suffer that thing because his father did not have any building, let alone have his building seized. You know, and yes, I said that one. Let's go on. So thank you very much for that contribution. Balogun did that, but what you would expect is that people will be grateful and say, oh, they did that to us, they did that for us, thank you. But no, if you have been conditioned to be a victim, it doesn't matter what people do, they would be wrong. And I always pray the prayer that may God not make you, you know, help ingrates. And if you ever do, maybe for some supernatural reason, divine reason, God said you must help that ingrate, may you not be close to that person, because they will wear you out. You'll be doing good, and they will make, they will tell the world that you're the worst person, regardless of what you're doing, regardless of facts. You could lay the facts in front of them, like, and so what? Am I not entitled to it in the first place? Who even know you? Who knows how you got the money first? When you say, I mean, example for instance, let's say you're helping somebody, they're going to school, or you're helping them, especially among the educated people. Forget common person who is not so educated in the villages. I mean, it's okay. The educated elite amongst them, it's just sad. Down to the top is victimhood. So everybody has to create the wrongs. You have to get so whenever somebody breaks the wrong with the truth, you have to shout, hey, I'm a victim. So you can use blackmail to get the wrongs for your ladder. It's not going to be from us. Amen. All right. Akadol says, "Kò sí bí wọ́n ṣe lè ṣe bolo tí ò ní run ẹ̀ tí ò ní no bẹ́ẹ̀ kan lè ṣe ń pòwe yẹn. Bọ́n máa ń sọ ni pé kò sí bọ́n fẹ́ ṣe bolo tí ò ní run gbẹ." But thank you. I understand what you're saying. So it says this is a result of mind underdevelopment. Well, okay, Agility has already written kò sí bí wọ́n ṣe bolo tí ò ní run gbẹ. All right. By the way, beyond Nigeria, it's also in your personal life. Okay, so you are going to close the door of the opportunity. So let's even leave. It's not even about Nigerian story now or history. Even your own personal life. If someone is helping you out, maybe at work, your family, or someone has done something for you, you're expecting $1 billion, they gave you $1 million, and you are crying all over the place complaining, you will shut that door. You will shut that door. That entitlement, some people just have it. I don't know how they got it. they can calculate your salary for you and spend it on your behalf, and then they tell you exactly how much they expect to get from you. Like you didn't work all your way. You've got to have a heart of gratitude. And again, on an individual basis, I think some people should probably just do some work on themselves. All of us should do it. So it's not like I'm not even talking to anybody in particular, so that helps. But all of us, we should just check it out. Like if you notice that you're becoming entitled to stuff, show more gratitude. That way you balance things out, and before you know it, you'll be in a position to help others. You'll be the one that people also come to and say, and you're able to help people, because you see, you cannot attract what you despise. If you despise people that are doing you good, you will never be able to help others. Even when you help others, what you got from what you did to the other people, they will do to you. All right, and that's why you have and it's sad and it's shocking if you really think about it. When you put this thing at the level of an ethnicity, where you speak to people, and it's very, very hard for you to find 1, 2, 3 people that can actually say, you know what, you guys actually tried for us. Every time you talk is complaint. We run away. Good runs away from people like that. May God help us. Someone says, this Ojukwu says no accountability. Yeah. And I think the reason we don't have accountability, or the reason it was activated, to be honest, is because of Nigeria. It's because of Nigeria. And it's a mistake that should never be made again. Right? Even in our individual lives, if a person, there are certain things that people do, they've got to pay. It doesn't have to be, and I'm not saying from a place of, I hate you, I must deal with you, you must pay. No. But you've got to create a structure, which some people actually did in government, to be clear. But it's not to this topic. But you've got to make it very clear. Whatever you're getting here, you're getting it based on the good graces of the people around here. You are not entitled to nothing here based on what you have done. That's what happened in Europe. You've got to let people know what they did. They didn't sweep things under the carpet after the Civil War in the United States. The US gave the South nothing because they owed them nothing. Now they do good people, great nation. I was saying we have to give people £20. Even now they are still cursing him out for that £20, which he did not owe them. And it's a shame. People messed up. Order. And that order, they must know that the order is being created because of what they did, so that this kind of thing will not happen again, not just from them, but from others. In other words, say you did something terrible, you're back now, okay, you are forgiven, Jesus is Lord. But we're going to have to create a structure that makes it difficult for you to do that thing again, and for others to do the thing again. And that happened from the military side. They did it, but they didn't do it in such a way that everybody mamo. And the reason, and I'll tell you one thing, the thing they did, I'm trying not to say some things, but the thing they did that kind of diluted what other good they did was a statement: no victor, no vanquished. It's a very terrible thing to say. There's a victor and you guys were vanquished. And I've said this over and over again, right? If you say no victor, no vanquished, you are creating a vacuum, right? Because this person knows that he's not the victor. He didn't win. He also know he would also not want to call himself the vanquished because of ego, which is natural, right? He doesn't want to. He has pride. He doesn't want to say he was vanquished. So if he cannot be victor because, of course, he did not win, and he doesn't like to acknowledge the fact that he would not want to acknowledge the fact that he was vanquished, now you have a vacuum. He has to fill it with something. So guess what he does? He calls himself a victim. And the person who made the pronouncement, no victor, no vanquished, will have to spend their lifetime trying to that they didn't make the vanquished a victim. And the sad part, by the way, the person who made that pronouncement, that's Nigeria, can afford it. The person who is looking for others to prove that they're not victims cannot afford it. Igbos cannot afford victimhood. And I'll tell you why. I'm not saying it because of any personal thing. I talk to young people, and it's a shame that children who know nothing just grow up being victims. It's like a family heirloom. It's like inheritance. It's dangerous because after a while, you see, a generation is coming, and it has started rising since 2023. Thank God for that election. The generation is going to, and they are speaking up now. They're using social media. They're going to become very loud, and they are all non-Igbos. They get to a point where when you complain, just one complaint, they will tell you, and so what? We don't care. You don't want to get to that point in life because you have stifled everybody. You have choked everybody with victimhood. They just don't care anymore. That you understood gratitude. All of this to say that we're still talking about abandoned properties. The person who is saying that your Bible, used or took over the buildings because we had abandoned properties commission. By the way, the abandoned properties committees was actually set up by Go1 in every state, and the governors took charge. And although we had it in the western region, we had it in Lagos, just like they had it in other states. But the reason was to actually protect the property, not to steal those properties. If you have any problem with Rivers people, go and talk to them. And they've told us the reason they did their own. I don't know if the reason is, I don't even think it's just, I don't think it justifies what they did, to be honest, right? But I understand exactly what happened. We already talked about it. You should take over people's lands and properties in shady ways, or you burn down their buildings. Those are the two major things I discovered in my research. Number one was that they burnt down buildings belonging to Rivers people. Akwa Ibom people, Cross River people, burned down their buildings when they were fighting the war. Number two was the fact that before the war, the way properties were taken, because the commercial city town or city in the eastern region at the time was Port Harcourt. So everybody wanted to have something to do in Port Harcourt. The folks who now bought properties in Port Harcourt, right, using the government's, lands and GRAs, and also using loans obtained from the government, were mostly Igbos. But the crazy part is that the money that belonged to the government, and those people felt slighted. Whether what they did was right or wrong, you can go and ask them. But the point is, we should also ask questions. If people are doing terrible things to you, I mean, they may be terrible people, to be clear. It doesn't have to be your fault. But if it's happening every time, maybe you should also sit down and say, Kimoshi, did I do something wrong? Introspection is not such a bad thing to do sometimes. And I'm not saying that you should blame yourself for every bad thing people do to you, but how can they hate you in the north, in the west, in the south, in the middle belt, in the middle west, in the middle Kinikon, middle east, every middle and center? How? Why would everybody just hate? Maybe you have something to fix. It is well. We're still reading some of the comments. Like I said, the comments don't almost become another session, but I'll just find a way to wrap it up very quickly. Lagos says, thanks for enlightening and opening the eyes of our people. Thank God. Thank you too for listening. You're doing a wonderful job. God will continue to be with you and your family. Amen. And yours too. Thanks a lot. Great Time says they're so lucky that Nigeria as at then was so organized. Nigeria of today can't even keep records. I think one of the things that Nigerians don't know is that every single thing, when we have these sessions, I'm not creating anything. All I'm doing is just, opening the books. These things are hiding in plain sight, right? They're hiding in plain sight, and it's important that we keep talking about these things so that everybody would know what happened. And thank God the books have been published, right? And the books are available, and I keep mentioning them. So somebody asks which books. We read a lot of books. I don't even know which one you're asking at this point. Some of the books we read today in the video you just listened to would be My Life, Lagos State, My Life and Service, I think, by Mbolaji Johnson. We also read Go On, the biography of a soldier statesman by J. Sawelago. We read There Was a Country by Chino Achebe. We read Back onto Self by Shagari. We read Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria by H.M. Kirk Green. We read Awolowo and the Forgotten Documents of the Nigerian Civil War by Odia Famon. We read The Open Sore of a Continent by Wole Soyinka. That's about it. And I also made reference to Ojukwu's Rebellion and World Opinion by Neil Graham Douglas. Yeah, so I hope you got the names. Thank you. Please don't ask again. No, you have to go and listen to this thing because it will help. All right, I have answered that question. Greater Me 77 says, we know they all withdrew their monies before leaving to the east. They gave it to Ojukwu to change to worthless Biafra pounds. That's another topic. To be honest, many of them did not even have bank accounts. How many people had bank accounts in 1967? To be fair, after the war, they brought the money back and told Nigeria to give them Nigerian pound. The audacity. You took your money, gave it to somebody, the person ran to Cote d'Ivoire. You are bringing the nonsense the person gave to you to me and tell me to give you real money. Why? Because I have to prove that I'm not a bigot. If you like, call me a bigot, I don't care. And I was like, listen, if you have the original Nigerian pound, bring it. We're going to give you. Sorry, if you have the original Nigerian pound before a particular date, they told them they bring the money and collect the new Nigerian pound. Then they said, okay, if you have your passbook and you can show proof of, the money you saved, you get your money back. And a lot of people got their monies back. And the funny thing is, I've noticed in my research that folks whose parents actually had money, they got their money back. It's people whose parents could not rub 2 coins. They're the ones telling you that they took their money. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. 1 second, I think we lost our internet. Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. Okay. So yeah, the whole Ojukwu thing that's not Nigeria's responsibility. It's the responsibility of people. And the £20 excretion payment was supposed to be Ojulon Rojushanu. Thank you, Tidan. Thank you, Ojuge. Ojulon Rojushanu, like, oh, these people are people, they're going through these tough times. Let's help them. And I think that's the right thing to do. I would do the right thing, But people can make you feel like you're doing something bad. I would do the right thing. I'll keep saying, but I would not do it with the benefit of hindsight. And the reason I'm not going to do it is not because I would do something bad. It's because you are rewarding bad behavior and you're also planting the seed for your own children. See, if you do it in a normal scenario, I think it's actually a good thing to do. It's a very good thing to do. But I think the most important thing would be to help heal folks mentally and try as much as possible not to expose them to the propaganda before the war. That's why when you read Ojukwu's book, what's his name? Even Ojukwu's book, because I am involved, you don't see any serious thing that can actually help most people. But this one we've already to talk about. When you read, what's the man's name? There was a country, Achebe. Like, how can you still be writing like this on your deathbed? You don't want to leave this world without propagating the propaganda. It must be here. And it's sad. I wish people could know exactly how I feel about this thing. It's not about fighting anybody. It's just sad. You can't even have constructive engagement or can't have conversation with people without them just bringing up things that have nothing to do with anything. The only thing some people can do is speak English and do their work. So they are taught to be accountants, they can do it. They are taught to be engineers, they can do it. But in critical thinking and understanding history and understanding perspectives, they just can't. And I've seen the best, in their field, but not very smart when it comes to these basic things. It's a shame. We're going to just quickly wrap it up. Sometimes I grew up begging my Igbo friends. I voted for Obi because of that. I fought my family for them. Wow. That's Aridunu. Thank God for 2023 elections. Thank God you voted for Obi, by the way. I'm glad you did, because you would never do it again. You will never do it again. So at least you had that experience. Nobody needs to teach you anything. You saw it. You saw what happened. You saw how that played out. So hopefully you won't have to do it again. And this is what I was saying, right? When people start to blackmail you and say, oh, you did this, you did that, you now begin to try to pander because you're trying to make up for something your parents did. But in reality, your parents did nothing wrong. And it's easy for Yoruba people because you are so close. You're so close. Not because we share borders, but because, you've lived in Yoruba land, you're close. So it's easy for you to be blackmailed. And you are spending your entire lifetime making up for what wasn't even yours to me. I mean, it's just, but I'm glad you're good, Arijono. I'm glad that you fought your family. Hopefully you won't do it again. But thank you very much. Julia says, these people aren't worth risking their relationship. I mean, it is well. People destroyed relationship because of that Peter B election. Oh. Please, if you did, don't do it again. Thank you. Let's not, I'm sure you have learned, everybody has learned the lessons. All right. Maurice says, I live in Delta State. Delta Igbos make me hear a lot. You were trying to come up earlier. I accepted your request, but I didn't see you. So if you're still here, please send your request. May God have mercy on those of you who live. You even share borders. We don't share borders, and we still are subjected to these things. But no, we're going to keep speaking up again as respectfully as we can. But we're not going to let lies fester just because we want to have quote unquote one nation built on, the region of my own people, right? You can't build your whatever self-esteem at the expense of Yoruba people. That's not going to work. All right. Someone says £5 million then was a lot of money. That was Lagos. Yes. What the Minister of Finance at the time did, by the way, that was Awo, was to make sure that there was enough money in African Continental Bank, that was Azikiwe's bank, and Cooperative Bank for Eastern Nigeria. And the reason was because those banks were the preferred banks of Igbos, the same way they like Fidelity now. Those banks, they used to use those banks. So I would thought if you put money there, they'll be able to access the loans, be able to start their own businesses, and then it will have a multiplying effect on the economy of the Igbos and of the Southeast. I don't know how people will still curse that kind of man. If you do that, you can never make it in life. What's that when you sell McDonald's? What's that? I'm sure you remember that skit. Say you will never make it in life. I don't think people can make it in life. And when I say make it in life, it's not about having money. It's not about money. Money is the least thing. Some people are so poor, the only thing they have is money. It's not about money. It's about, even mental health is off. You have money, but you speak and you're so crass. You're so just, it is well. But it's good to have money too, Sha. It's very good. But having money without sense is not very good. Great Semi says they were collecting locations they did not work for. Yeah. All the money Southeastern region today during the war, Awo kept that money. I don't want to get into it today, but you can, if you look for, there's a video, I've done a video on that before on YouTube. What Awo did for the Igbos. I think that's the title. If you read his 1983 campaign in Abeokuta, he talked about how he saved the money and gave it to the administrator. Who was the administrator at the time? Okwabi Asika. He didn't have to do it, by the way, because the war was on, right? Every other Nigerian, quote unquote, should share the money while Biafrans chill. But no, it wasn't a man like others, Awo. It was just a different breed. He put the money together, gave it to them. And when the issue of subvention started, he started giving them £990,000 every month. And of course, when the other states heard about it, they also wanted the same. So he started giving them as well. £990,000 on a monthly basis to the Southeastern region at the time, 1969-70. But people don't like to hear that. It has to be victimhood. It's a shame. And you want to have one Nigerian unity. In other words, unity must be based on the fact that you are a victim, not on the truth of what happened. That's not unity. That's slavery. And I ain't no slave. Glory to God. Okay. No victor, no vanquish produces a vacuum which will... Thank you. Esheo. Someone says no victor, no vanquish, and they killed Victor Banjo. It is well. Lagos says the Omoluabi attitude of Yoruba has been taken for granted. They see Yoruba as Mugu. I think Yoruba people also need to understand what being Omoluabi really means. I think our own definition of Omoluabi, no definition, our understanding of the concept of Omoluabi is also deficient. Omoluabi is being calm, right? Is being humble, but that's not all there is to it. There were 7 components of that, and I think I did a video on Omoluabi one time like that. Maybe I'll find it and play it for you. I did a video on Omoluabi, and there's Igboya, boldness. There's Akekanju, valor. It's also part of Omoluabi. Omoluabi is, is calm, is respectful, ibowo, but it's also bold. Omoluabi will slap you when you disrespect his heritage, and it will still be Omoluabi. Be like say, maybe one of these will have a session on Omoluabi, because and you're right to my brother, in the comment section. I just think that you're able to, whenever we hear Omoluabi, it means a docile person who just takes crap from people because he wants to prove that he's respectful. That's why, that people on some platforms, they just, throw dirt. In the beginning, I'll just take it and say, like, you know what, lady, the day I answered one of them, it didn't see it coming. Because, I will give you one very long rope to hang yourself, because I will respect you to the point where even you know that, Ojukwu here. The day the Omoluabi that will slap you, the Omoluabi that will give you koboko, the day that thing will enter, you will remember the one that has been respectful of the world. And it's still Omoluabi. So again, I'm just saying that, we're respectful, we're always respectful. But we're bold, we're not cowards. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, because it happens very, very often. It used to be very popular in comedy, just absolute nonsense. People are looking for stereotypes. Oh, these people are cowards, they're Yoruba. I'm like, who are you? You're from a place where you have no history of bravery. You can't mention one hero in your entire history of your existence. I call Yoruba people cowards. Are you insane? And you too, you're Yoruba, you just laugh. It's funny. It's not funny. It's retarded. We've got to learn not to just take this back. Sometimes you also have this backhanded compliment. Oh, you are not like other Yoruba people. You two are like, hey, that's so nice. You are fine. Other ones are dirty. The person talking to you in the entire lineage. Let's not talk about stereotypes, so that we don't become what we are. It is well. Roving Blog says, coincidentally, there's a district in Ile-Ife called Igboya. I laugh because I'm very close to that particular Ogbon. Igboya quarters. Igboya. Our area one here in Ile-Ife. But thank you very much. I'm glad you know part of Ife. That's good. Thank you. So yes, Igboya is part of Omoluabi. And please again check out the video on our YouTube channel. I'll find you the title before we go, so it will be easy. And maybe one of these days we'll have a session on it, because it's important for us to remember that Omoluabi is not just letting things slide. I know the funny part, right? Some people will tell you that you should respect. Now, should be in your culture, you respect people. In our culture, we also have something we do for older people. Let me tell you something. Yoruba land. Perizim Wale, did you go to Ife? How did you know that it's along Road 7? Roving Block says, I spent a large part of my early childhood in Ife. Wow. Inara Oko Waja. Abi Inara Lilo Waja. Good. Makes me feel good. All right, what was I saying? You know, in Yoruba culture, we respect elders a lot. But you know that we can also, fún ọba kó ṣígbá. Àgbà tó bá kọjá yẹn ni wọ́n máa ń dá sẹ́ríà fún ọ. Oh, you lived in Igboya Court? Wow. See if people here. Oh. I lived at number 9 Igboya Street. Wow. Nice. Nice. So I've seen a lot of great Ife Igboya. Thank you. All right, let's begin to wrap up now. If you ever don't enter. This original comment is actually very emotional for me, Sha. I'm just going back to it. Voted for B because of that. I fought my family. Do you know how many young Yoruba people are in this situation? I met one years ago. She heard me say something, which, I mean, of course, you know, I don't even insult people. I'm always, maybe I was too factual. She was like, I can't believe you say that. You know, I have people friends. I'm like, so? I mean, I have people friends. So that's why when people say hate, I'm like, do you get what you're talking about? I conduct my businesses with Igbo. I've met Igbo people today. I have Igbo tenants. Having Igbo people around is a blessing. It's not, nobody is fighting it. Nobody is fighting individuals. It's about a culture. And if that culture doesn't evolve, there will be pushbacks. So all this, I have Igbo friends. I have Igbo people too. And I don't hear. By the way, I don't like saying that I don't eat Igbos because I think it's just nonsense. I don't have to even explain. If you think I eat Igbos, that's your business. The point I'm making is that there are Igbos in our lives. This is not about having issues with individuals and say, I don't like Igbo people. To even say that doesn't make sense. Why would I not like you? I cannot not love people. Like, even if you're a human being, I have no problem. But if you have terrible culture and terrible attitude, I don't care where you're from. I don't have to prove to you that I'm not, nobody cares about that. Anyway, we've seen a lot of OAU people, OAU quarters. But I say, today, we're ending on Ife note. Hakato says, Bigochi laughing with Bigochi. I don't know about that. Oh boy. But thank you very much for writing that thing, Original. It's actually the highlight of that section of reading comments. Thank you. It's actually very touching, to be honest. And thank you. And I'm glad, again, everyone, love everybody, respect everyone. Nobody to say that. Just know who you are, know where you're from, be proud of your heritage, and apologize for nothing when there's no reason to apologize. That's all we're saying. And if anybody brings lies and says you've got to accept it because you have to prove to me that you're one Nigeria, tell the person they are retarded. It's a sign of insanity for you to be lying and expect me not to say anything because I want to prove to you that I'm united with you. I don't want that kind of unity. You are not even free enough to enslave me. That's slavery. And you're not free enough to enslave me. You don't even know what it means to be free because you are caged in your mind. So please don't bring that here. May God bless you and everything that has to do with you. May God bless everybody. May God bless every part of Nigeria. It is well. So let's go on YouTube and read some things here. The Anambran traders are currently crying, being marginalized in the main market. And that was the reason behind the demolition going on to flush out their eastern borders. I saw a video yesterday of that stuff. I think there's the thing that the government of Anambra State is also doing. I didn't even know that people were even talking about marginalization. It is well. Yomites on YouTube says it was alleged that other traders from Imo, Enugu, Ebonyi made up 95% of the main market traders, while Anambrians were just 5%. To be fair, Anambrians, Soludo says 50% of them were not even in the state. 50% of the indigenous live outside the state. But if they're complaining about marginalization in their own land, I'm sure they'll take care of themselves. By the way, I think those who want Nigeria to be one and talk about all this, unity, they should try it in their ethnicity first now. It's important. I think Keshoro Day, charity begins at home. All right. Is YouTube on? Okay, YouTube is on. I'm just gonna see YouTube. Mr. Shola Olajide on YouTube says, also on Facebook, says the war didn't start the day Igbos left for Biafra. They left with all their money in Nigerian banks and converted it to Biafran currency from the Bank of Biafra. It was the Biafran money that they were spending to survive for a long period of peace. Yes. So money. So when Papa saw what Ojukwu was trying to do, and by the way, I should quickly mention that Ojukwu had invaded the Midwest, but he didn't just invade the Midwest. He also is everything all right on YouTube? Okay, it's Facebook. Anyway, Ojukwu had invaded the Midwest, right? But he didn't just invade the Midwest. He also looted the Central Bank of Nigeria in Benin. And he did the same thing in Calabar, Central Bank, and then he looted the post office, took postal orders and all of those things. So he was robbing banks and post offices in order to get the postal orders. And he had gotten millions of Nigerian pounds at the time. And the plan was to use that money to with an ingenious plan. Talked to Yakubu Gowon, just three of them. They planned it. They finalized in December, and in January of 1968, they came up with a plan that folks had to change their money within, I think it was about 2 weeks or so. You had to change your money. It was the same Nigerian pound, it was same value, but different design. So people like Angela Okorie were able to change the Nigerian pound for the new Nigerian pound, right? Those who are taking their money and giving it to Ojukwu got Biafran pound, so they're spending. After the war, the money, of course, was worthless. They brought that money to Nigeria and then asked Nigeria to give them money. So in case, imagine for instance, you came with a truckload of worthless paper and asked me to give you the same value. Even if you can't even tell me to give you anything for it. But you see, Ojukwu was like, listen, these guys have given their money to Ojukwu. He has, done what he wanted to do. How can we help? Let's do 20 pounds for each person, so they can use that to start their lives all over again. They can travel. Then let's put money in the banks so they can take loans and start businesses. Just do everything for them. But nobody talks about that because it doesn't fit the victim narrative. But thank you for your comment on Facebook. It says the 20 pounds each, which I will give them on return, was a humanitarian gesture, like you said, Pusui Orowa Loje Waju. Thank you very much, Mr. Ishola Olajide on Facebook, and thank you everyone for listening. So you spend enough time reading comments because we can make sure that we also engage our listeners. All right. Thank you for being here. Before we go, first, let me tell you that we're having another session tomorrow at 4 p.m. We have the sessions every weekday, Monday to Friday p.m. West African time. We have the music start playing on TikTok, and then we'll connect other platforms much later. Tomorrow, we're going to have a great time together. Before we go, we're going to listen to our anthems, the Nigerian anthem and the Yoruba anthem. I want to thank everybody who has power tapped on TikTok and gotten also 30.7k likes. This is beautiful, and thank you very, very much. Thanks to folks on YouTube and on Facebook who have also liked the live, and thanks to those on Twitter who have liked and reposted. I really do appreciate your support. Thanks for the gift as well. Thank you very much for your generosity. May God bless you and increase you on all sides. Thank you very much. We're going to have the anthem now, and we will call it a day. Here's a Nigerian anthem. Enjoy, and everybody should know it. It's not that hard. It's just 3 stanzas. Please learn if you don't know yet, and learn the Yoruba anthem as well. Both are beautiful. And everybody has to learn that Yoruba anthem if you're Yoruba, because, I mean, Awo wrote that stuff. Awo. And was sent to music by Baba Hunde. So let's have the 2 anthems, and we'll call it a day. Thank you. ìmọ́lẹ̀ ogun adúláwọ̀ ìmọ́lẹ̀ wo ni wọ́kùn ní agbára Ọlọ́run ilẹ̀ Yorùbá ò ní bàjẹ́ Nigeria náà ò ní bàjẹ́ lágbára Ọlọ́run. May God bless you, may God keep you, may God bless Yoruba land, may God bless Nigeria and every ethnicity within the nation, within the country called Nigeria. May God bless all the nations within it, and may God bless you. The evening, I'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Ife time, West African time. Have a great one. God bless you. Odaro, Eshe.